Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for holding this hearing, and thank you for all of our witnesses for being here today. You talked about so much that's so important, whether it's talking about trade policy or regulations, or how do we prepare for the future with investments and education, and it's so important as we look forward. You know, one of the themes I think that came out of the election last year was how do we focus on putting America first and focusing on our future and what do we do moving forward. I think Americans are tired of seeing factories shut down and production move overseas and loss of jobs just because maybe production costs or production time's faster. And regulations, as has been mentioned, has been somewhat entrenched in some of our public policy that is kind of a part of the problem that's causing this and driving this. I think we all agree that if we don't look at how do we continue to grow, make America first in terms of production and opportunities, we won't have an economy that will produce what we need, and we'll be dependent upon foreign countries, in some cases adversaries like China, to produce some of the goods we need. And we can't allow things like semiconductors to be an area where we're dependent upon somebody else. So we need to make sure that we focus on good public policy to address some of these production issues as well as technological developments in the future and make sure that we stay competitive. Supply chain modernization and factory productivity improvements are certainly important. In my home district, the 4th District in Kansas, aerospace production is critical for our economy. And I've toured a lot of plants and manufacturing facilities and looking at how do we develop and produce parts, not just for today, but for the future. And some of the major companies there, Spirit and Textron and Bombardier and so many others are constantly looking to improve and produce aircraft that help power our nation and move us forward. Dr. McLaughlin, in your testimony, you touched on the importance of research and development for long-term economic growth, and providing immediate expensing for research and development costs has been one of the priorities in Congress and always has had bipartisan support. In Kansas, R&D expensing helps make new jobs and helps grow the economy. Can you tell us a little bit more about burdensome regulation and how inadequate tax policies may affect decisions as businesses make, especially related to R&D expenditures?
Thank you for your question. So in the study I referenced, I looked at how regulation, the buildup of rules over time, directly affects business investments of various types, and tax policy is held constant there. So while I appreciate the nuance of what you're asking, my study didn't directly examine the interaction between regulations and tax policy. That said, like an obvious path forward for improving investment in research and development is to consider all ways in which regulation could interact with tax policy. I don't think I have empirical evidence on that right now, though.
Yep. Well, you noted something pretty interesting in your comments around the roughly study showed 0.8% reduction in GDP just based on regulatory burden. And that's kind of played out with some of the studies that we've seen from our bipartisan Joint Committee on Taxation and a Congressional Budget Office that said if we get a 0.8% increase in GDP growth, we'd actually, over 10 years, collect $3 trillion more in tax revenue, which would help with our deficit. And I don't know if your study included anything talking about the deficit and how do we the benefit that we get out of good regulatory policy to help with that.
I think that's a great point. The growth effect obviously will increase the tax base, and that should go into the budget conversation. And I would say the growth effect from this study is corroborated by other studies. I did a study of British Columbia as an example. They cut regulations by about 40% between 2001 and 2004. As a result, GDP growth went up by 1.2%. Again, a larger tax base.
Yep. So excellent. Thank you. Dr. Chevy, you talked about supply chains in the workforce and new technologies. I mean, how can we use new technologies in the United States, like AI, to help promote more domestic manufacturing?
Well, first of all, using AI is a general term, but using AI. I was trying to see if you can read lips, that's all.
Thank you.
Obviously you can't. So, what were we talking about?
Talking about using technology to help make more
use AI,
promote domestic.
Use AI technology. First of all, AI allow you to look at much more data, I mean, significantly enough, and analyze more data. So you know more. Your decisions are based on facts first of all. Second, most companies work in silos. There's the sales, the procurement. They hardly talk to each other in most companies, and it's not even Congress. It's just in companies. So the idea that information flows seamlessly across a company immediately make them more efficient because, again, they know more data. Then there is the ability, most decisions have to do with the future. You have to forecast what is likely to be. With machine learning and generative AI, we can forecast better. Now, when I say forecast better, you have to realize it's not 100% better, but it's enough better to make a real difference because then your decisions, you're aiming like Gretzky said, you want to skate to where the puck is gonna be. So here is you wanna make decisions towards what the world is gonna look like in the future, in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years. Using modern AI allow you to forecast better, to take a lot, because the large data set, you can take a lot more factors into account and forecast better. So this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm out of time. I yield back, Chairman.